everybody, welcome to the Mana Leek. I'm Jonna as always, and it's the second last day of set review. Today we're going to take a look at Azorius, Simic, and Orzhov, and then tomorrow we'll finish up with the last two guilds as well as artifacts and lands. What are we doing here? Well, you should know by now. We're doing a limited set review. We're taking a look at all the cards in specifically draft and limited. We're not talking about constructed here. Now, just before we jump into the set review, I do want to do something very exciting here and talk about Inked Gaming for a second, and how you can get a free playmat. You might know I'm an Inked Gaming affiliate. Use the promo code MANALEEK10, all one word, 10 is the number, to get 10% off your order at Inked Gaming, but I am now an Inked Gaming sponsored affiliate, which means I get more support from them, and I work more closely with them, which can also mean some more giveaways for you guys. So if you go over to twitch.tv/themanaleek and you check out my stream on January 17th, where I'll be playing Ravnica Allegiance, as it will have come out on both MTGO and Magic Arena. I don't know which one I'm going to play it on just yet. You will get a chance to win a playmat. If you haven't checked out my streams before, we do marble races during the streams. Marble races are basically a fancy way of doing a randomized giveaway. We actually play them for fun and keep track of points with the leaderboard system, but I also do use them when we do giveaways. So we'll be doing a Marble Grand Prix, which means for everybody who is there that day, we will do a series of races, and the overall point total winner will get themselves a playmat. So go check that out, twitch.tv/themanaleek on January 17th, and go check out Inked Gaming and use the promo code MANALEEK10 if you do buy something there for 10% off your order. Also, just before we get into today, if you're watching this video on today, January 16th, I'm streaming over at twitch.tv/themanaleek starting at 11 a.m. Eastern. Wizards of the Coast has invited me to a streamers-only event where we get a fully stocked account and access to Ravnica Allegiance today. A day before anybody else gets it. It comes on Arena tomorrow. So if you want to go check that out, see me play a whole bunch of Ravnica Allegiance Limited and probably jam some janky standard decks, maybe even infinite damage deck, who knows? You can go over to twitch.tv/themanaleek and check that out, starting at 11 a.m. and going for many, many, many hours. But let's get on into the first card. We're going to start off with Azorius. Up first is Absorb. Absorb is white, blue, blue for an instant at rare. Counter target spell. You gain 3 life. People are off their rockers for this card in standard, but in limited, it's another horrifyingly bad rare that I do not want to open. It's a harder to cast cancel. 3 life, I don't care. It's a harder to cast cancel. Cancel is already like a D in draft. You just never really want to play a cancel. And if you do play this, it's going to be in sealed. I need my 3 mana counterspells to really do something, and 3 life is nothing. So I'm out on this. It's like a D, D-. I don't want to play a hard to cast cancel. Up next is Azorius Night Arbiter. Azorius Night Arbiter is 3 white blue for a creature human knight at common. It's 2/5 with vigilance, and Azorius Night Arbiter can't be blocked. This seems really dumb. Like, it blocks like a champ and is also an unblockable 2/5 with vigilance, so it still gets to block. This card is super real. The blue-white flying deck is going to love to block stuff on the ground with this. It's very much like Sun-Crested Pterodons, which was amazing in Rivals of Ixalan, except this is unblockable instead of just flying. Can't block flyers, but big whoop. This is great. I've got this at a B-. I think it's a really high pick, and boy, this card just looks really, really good. B- for Azorius Night Arbiter. Up next is Azorius Skyguard. Azorius Skyguard is 4 white blue for a creature human knight at uncommon. It's a 3/3 with flying and first strike. Creatures your opponents control get -1, -0. This seems really good for 6 mana. 3/3 is a little bit understated for a 6 mana flyer, but First Strike does make it a heck of a beefy blocker if you happen to be on the back foot. But you do, of course, want to be attacking with this. And shrinking the team's power should help it live and help you buy some time. All in all, I think this is totally fine. I don't think I'm falling over myself to grab this card. 6 mana is still a fair bit. If I'm low enough curve, it maybe even gets cut. Probably not too often, though. But I'm going to go with a C+ on this. I think it's really good, but it's not quite the oh my god, I gotta have it kind of card, just because it's slightly too expensive. C+ for Azorius Skyguard. Deputy of Detention is up next. Deputy of Detention is 1 white-blue for a creature Vidalcan Wizard at rare. It's a 1/3. When Deputy of Detention enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls and all other non-land permanents that player controls with the same name as that permanent until Deputy of Detention leaves the battlefield. That's all one sentence. Holy moly. Yeah. This is Detention Sphere, but on a body. That's really good. In Limited, you are going to get one thing with this. It's very, very, very rare that you're going to get multiple things. The most common things that you would get multiples of would be spirits, which is awesome because this kills them because they're tokens. But this is still very good. Even though this is probably just always only going to hit one thing, it's still fantastic. It's not Fiend Hunter, so it doesn't quite do all of the weird flickering shenanigans, but it's still absolutely fantastic. I've got this at an A-. It's a snap first pick every single time you see it. It pulls you right into Azorius. Splashable. Great card. A- for Deputy of Detention. Up next is Dovan, Grand Arbiter. Dovan, Grand Arbiter is 1 white-blue for Legendary Planeswalker Dovan at Mythic. Starts with 3 loyalty for that 3 mana. +1 until end of turn whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player. Put a loyalty counter on Dovan, Grand Arbiter. So that's not the amount of damage that it did, but it is each creature that dealt damage. So if you deal damage with 3 creatures, you get 3 counters. -1, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. You gain 1 life. -7, look at the top 10 cards of your library. Put 3 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Dovan seems great. Seems absolutely great. People are down on him because people, of course, want blue-white to be the super heavy-duty controlling deck. And this wants me to attack with creatures. That's stupid, but that's what blue-white is here. Blue-white is like tempo flyers. Yes, there's some grindy stuff you can do with blue-white, but I think a lot of blue-white decks are definitely going to want to attack, and upside, they're going to be attacking with flyers, which are going to be getting in for damage, which means Dovan gets more and more and more loyalty. Worst case, Dovan pops out a Thopter. He protects himself. He makes a creature. He makes a creature token that, if it doesn't just die or have to jump, is very relevant. And if you get to -7, that's a heck of a lot of card stuff. I think Dovan is a fantastic limited planeswalker. I think he's really, really good. It's a snap first pick. I've got it at a solid A. I'd be happy if Dovan was in every pack I had. A for Dovan, Grand Arbiter. Up next is Dovan's Acuity. Dovan's Acuity is 1 white-blue for an enchantment at uncommon. When Dovan's Acuity enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw a card. Whenever you cast an instant spell, not instant and sorcery, instant spell, during your main phase, you may return Dovan's Acuity to its owner's hand. Hey, look, it's the information campaign, people are calling it, because it looks like disinformation campaign. Because it looks like disinformation campaign, people are falling over themselves to stop themselves from saying this isn't good and say it's actually amazing, because of course everybody thought disinformation campaign wasn't going to be any good. This is actually not going to be that good. This is not great. This is 2 life, I don't care, and I draw a card for 3 mana. That's half of a divination. I don't really want to play that. And then, when I play an instant spell during my main phase, not even on my turn, but in my main phase, then I can return it to my hand, play it again, and I've spent 6 mana to draw 2 cards. Yay. This is not good. This is really, 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 really not good. I've got this at a D-. I don't ever really want to play Dovan's Acuity. Yes, I saw Marshall play it at the PPR and get up to like 40 life because he was just sitting back and dirtling around. I don't think you're going to be able to do that reliably. I don't care for this card. It is not disinformation campaign. I'm going to start out not playing this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just disinformation campaign all over again. I really don't think so. D- for Dovan's Acuity. Up next is Emergency Powers. Emergency Powers is 5 white-blue for an instant at Mythic. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. Exile Emergency Powers. Addendum: if you cast this spell during your main phase, you may put a permanent card with converted mana cost 7 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. This is Time Twister. Of course, everything about this is Time Twister before the addendum and before the exile, but it's nowhere near as powerful or as abusable because it costs 7 mana. I don't really want to play 7 drops in my deck, period. I don't want to play 7 drops that refill my opponent's hand. That is horrid. That's one of the worst ideas I could ever possibly think of. And then if I play it at sorcery speed, I get to play basically a random card because I don't know what I'm going to draw, and I probably have an empty hand at this point. Hopefully, I draw a card that is in some way relevant, and if I don't, then I spent my turn giving my opponent a better position to hit me because I'm passing the turn because I have no mana left. I think this card's bad. I've got it in an F. I just never, ever, ever, ever want to play this card. F for emergency powers. Up next is High Alert. High Alert is 1 white-blue for an instant at uncommon. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have defender. Pay 2 white-blue, untap target creature. It's this effect again. We saw this on Arcades Sabbath, and we saw this on Salt Formation, I think it was called. And it's never really worked that well in Limited. Sure, once or twice I saw people pull off an Arcades deck, but it was very rare and often not even that good and still very beatable. I'll leave this for other people to fool around with. There's just too much jank going on here. And if you fill your deck full of defenders, and this card's on like the bottom half of your deck, then what you doing? Nothing? Just blocking all day? Cool. Yeah, I've got this at like a D-. It's built around, but I'm never going to build around it. D- for High Alert. Up next is Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. Lavinia, Azorius Renegade is white-blue for a legendary creature human soldier at rare. She's a 2/2, and she has some text that doesn't really matter. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. So all those ramp decks that are totally ramping out instant spells and sorceries, they better watch out. I got Lavinia. To be honest, I was down on this card before I even just at this moment realized it said non-creature spells. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was used to cast it, counter that spell. So this stops Electrodominance. It doesn't even stop Electrodominance, it stops the card that's being cast for free. Yeah, no, Lavinia is a 2/2 for 2, and she's really hard to cast for 2. She's really super duper not good. I've got her at like a D. If you have to play a 2/2 for 2, here you go. But find one that costs 1 generic mana and 1 colored mana, because she's really bad. So D for Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. Not a D is Law Mage's Binding. Law Mage's Binding is 1 white-blue for an enchantment aura at common. It's got flash, enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So what if we take a rest and give it instant speed abilities and make it common? This card's common. I can't believe this card's common. This is very much an uncommon card. This card's amazing. This is incredible removal. I honestly can't believe it exists. Flash, it makes it very cool. It's at common, which means you can pick one up. 2 is absolutely not out of the question. 3 is not horribly out of the question. Remember, there's only 2 on average per pod. This is just insanely good. It's first pick out of a lot of packs. I super want as many copies of these as I can in my blue-white decks, and it's infinitely splashable in Simic and in Orzhov. A solid A- for Law Mage's Binding. Up next is Senate Guildmage. The Guildmages are back, of course. Blue-white, or white-blue rather, for a creature human wizard at uncommon. It's a 2/2. Pay a white and tap. You gain 2 life. Pay a blue, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. Loot. This is amazing. This is amazing. We're starting with the best Guildmage of all of them. All 10, I think. The Dimir one's up there for sure. This is just incredible. Looting is going to be the number 1 plan here, and you should be doing it every single turn that you have a blue mana available and your cards in hand aren't the literal best cards in your deck. Then if you're out of cards, gain 2 life. Sure, whatever. Use my mana. I'm going to have that mana left over. I may as well turn a plains into 2 life every turn. This feels extremely good, and I think I would first pick it a fair bit of the time. Easily the best Guildmage in this set. Questionable if it's the best of the 10. Super duper good. I've got this at a solid B+. I just can't quite go into A because it is just a 2/2. B+ for Senate Guildmage. Up next is our CCDD card of the set for Azorius, Sphinx of New Provost. Sphinx of New Provost is white, white, blue, blue for a creature Sphinx at uncommon. It's a 4/3 with flying and vigilance, and spells your opponent's cast that target Sphinx of New Provost cost 2 generic mana more to cast. It's pretty good. It's fine. It's great if it's a 4-drop. Which means you probably have 3 gates, 4 gates preferably. And if it does become more of a 5 or 7 drop, which is more likely if you just have islands and plains, then it's still fine. A 4/3 flyer is going to end a decent number of games relatively quickly. The Frost Titan ability here is nice, but it won't be that impactful. This either comes down late enough that even a 5-drop spell, your opponent can pay 7 for it to kill it, or a more premium, cheap removal spell isn't really that much more expensive to kill this off. Still, it is just a totally fine B-, and it is a reward if you're in blue-white, but I don't think it pulls me into blue-white, not like something like a Nightveil Predator would do. It's close, but it's not quite there. So I'm going to go B- for Sphinx of New Prov. Up next is Sphinx's Insight. Sphinx's Insight is 2 white, blue for an instant at common, draw 2 cards. Addendum, if you cast this spell during your main phase, you ready for it? You gain 2 life. Cast this as an instant spell, please. It's not good as a sorcery speed spell. That 2 life is never ever going to be worth it. This is just a harder to cast Inspiration. Inspiration is 3 and a blue. Draw 2 cards at instant speed. It's fine. If the format's really slow, this card's probably going to bump up to a C+, but I'm going to start it at a C for Sphinx's Insight, and I'm going to ignore that it had Addendum, basically. So that was our final dual-colored gold card, I suppose we'll call it, for Azorius. So let's go on to the hybrid card. Each guild has 1 hybrid common. Senate Griffon is 2 Azorius, so 2 white-white, 2 blue-blue, or 2 blue-white. For a creature Griffon at common, it's a 3/2 flying. When Senate Griffon enters the battlefield, scry 1. It's like half a Cloud Reader Sphinx, but, less toughness, and it's like a Cloud Reader Sphinx. Yeah, this thing's fine. 4 mana for a 3/2 flyer. I pay that all the time. And this could be in your white deck, this could be in your blue deck, in your Azorius deck, in your Simic deck. It's got great versatility there. And it scries 1. Cool. That's great. This card's totally fine. It's like a very, very, very solid, I think, B-. C+ feels too low for this. It's just really decent. So I'm actually going to go B- on a Senate Griffon. Give me 2 or 3 of these in my blue and or white decks, please. Now the guilds also have split cards, an uncommon and a rare. So the first uncommon is Dispose and Deploy. Depose. It couldn't be Dispose. Depose is 1 and an Azorius, 1 white or 1 blue. For an instant, tap target creature, draw a card. Deploy is 2 white blue. For an instant, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Then you gain 1 life for each creature you control. So you'll be gaining at least 2 life, if not more. This card seems solid. This card seems really, really, really solid. I don't like all of the uncommon split cards, but this one I do rather enjoy. Depose is fine in a tempo aggro deck, which it seems like blue-white might lean towards. People have been ragging on me that it's not an aggro deck. You don't win by turn 3. Whatever. Sky's deck, you know what I mean. But, it's not amazing. It's like a C. Maybe a C+, but we'll say C for Depose. Deploy, though, I really, really like. 4 mana for a flash 2/2 flyer, and you gain at least 2 life. That's super fine. You are going to catch flyers. You're going to catch 3/1s and 2/1s. You're going to catch them off guard. You're going to gain some life. Maybe they're on the back foot and you just get 2 more flying attackers. You get 2 more damage in the air. I really like Deploy. Deploy pushes this card well into a C+, if not B- territory. So yeah, if I'm Azorius and I can grab Deploy, I'm going to be very, very happy. And if I have to use the Depose portion of it, sure, that's fine. If I'm in Orzhov, I'll probably be totally okay with the Depose. And if I'm in Simic, Depose maybe goes down slightly, but I think is still playable. So I've got this whole card at like a B-, assuming you're in Azorius. And our final Azorius card is Warrant and Warden. Warrant is Azorius, white, blue, or white-blue. For an instant, put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. Warden is 3 white-blue for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 white and blue Sphinx creature token with flying and vigilance. Seems great. Both sides of this are super fantastic. 2 mana bounce to the top of the library is incredible. incredible. That feels like a Azorius charm. Even if it's in combat only, and I play it in every single blue-white deck ever. I'd play with this in an Orzhov deck. I would play this in a Simic deck 100% of the time. Now, if you don't end up having to bounce something with this, you just get yourself a 4/4 Vigilance Flyer for 5. That's really good. That's really good. That's almost vanilla test passing Vigilance Flyer. That thing's going to block and attack like a champ. This card is super solid first pick, and being the rare in the pack, it's less likely that there's going to be a more powerful card. I might pick premium removal over this, but that's about it. I've got this at a B+. Warrant Warden looks fantastic. So that's Azorius out of the way. Let's move on over to Simic. Simic, up first, we have Aeromunculus. Aeromunculus is 1 green-blue for a creature homunculus mutant at common. It's a 2/3 flyer with 2 green-blue, adapt 1. This was our first adapt creature that we saw, and people lost their minds about how crappy it looked. And I did not understand the hate for this card at all. A 2/3 flyer for 3 is always playable. It was called Chapelgeist in the original Innistrad draft, and I played as many as I could get my hands on. It was 1 white there. Later in the game, possibly the next turn when I have nothing else to spend 4 mana on, getting to turn this into a 3/4, as well as have that threat of activation in combat if I don't immediately turn it into a 3/4, is great. Yeah, you can only adapt once, but this is a totally solid common. It's an easy C+ for me. I think I play every single copy I draft. C+ for Aeromunculus. Up next is Applied Biomancy. Applied Biomancy is green-blue for an instant at common. Choose one or both. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Return target creature to its owner's hand. This card seems great. I love it. 2 mana, instant speed bounce, and I get to put a counter on a creature at common. I love this card. I love this card. Sign me up for Simic. This is great. It's exactly what I want to be doing in Magic. Bouncing creatures, improving my own creatures, all for the cost of 1 card. My only concern here is that Simic doesn't look that tempo-y, which is where bounce really shines the most, but bounce still could hold you in for the later game, which seems to be what Simic kind of wants to do. Simic wants to just dirtle around and then, oh, I don't know how that happened, but I got a 12/12 and start attacking. Yeah, this card seems great. I've got to put it at a B-. I love me some bounce. And if it does other stuff, even better. Up next is Biomancer's Familiar. Biomancer's Familiar is green-blue for a creature mutant. No other types, just a mutant. At rare, it's a 2/2. Activated abilities of creatures you control, adapt, cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana an ability costs to activate to less than 1 mana. Tap this. The next time target creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counters on it. Be aware this only works once. You can't tap this and then adapt your Aeromunculus 5 times. It only works for the next time that you would do it. Also, fringe case, be aware that if you did this on your unadapted Aeromunculus and you adapted, that's your next time. You don't get to do it again that turn. But that's super edge case. This seems like a great build around. Get yourself a bunch of adapt and just laugh and laugh and laugh. 2/2 for 2, already fine. Making those adaptabilities 2 mana cheaper is incredible. That value goes up a ton, and getting to readapt a creature once a turn could run away with the game. I think this is a first pick build around. Obviously, you have to be an adult and cut this if you ended up with like 2 other adapt creatures. But if you can get a bunch, this is going to be insane. So I've got this at a strong B, assuming that you did pick up a decent number of adapt creatures. This creature obviously does drop like a rock if you just don't have many. So solid B for Biomancer's Pet. Up next is Combine Guildmage for the Simic Combine. Combine Guildmage is green-blue for a creature Merfolk Wizard at uncommon. She's a 2/2. Pay 1 and a green, tap. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Pay 1 and a blue, tap. Move a +1/+1 counter from target creature you control onto another target creature you control. So this obviously wants the format to be really slow. You're basically tacking a 2-mana tax to a creature to get a counter, plus tapping a creature, which means it's not going to be able to block or attack or anything, which isn't the worst if you have nothing better to do. And if you are playing like 2 creatures that turn, then, you know, it's kind of like a 1-mana tax because they kind of split the cost. Moving the counters around, cool. Again, like you can adapt more. You can maybe trigger some things like the Biomancer Looter guy, but I'm not sold on Combine Guildmage. I'm gonna have to watch how it ends up playing out. I'm gonna start it at a C+, which is still a good grade. I still think you play this in every Simic deck, but I'm really gonna need to see if this is just a C+, just something that pops up now and then as a thing that you can do, or if it actually turns the Simic deck into like some sort of counter slinging machine. So I'm going to start at C+ for Combine Guildmage. Up next is Frilled Mystic. Frilled Mystic is green, green, blue, blue for a creature, elf, lizard, warrior at uncommon. She's a 3/2 with flash, and when Frilled Mystic enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. So she's just like that snake. Mystic Snake, but slightly harder to cast. You probably play this 100% of the time, and I think you pick it once you know your Simic. I just don't know if it fully pulls me into Simic. Getting a 3/2 creature out of your counterspell is certainly very nice, and probably still just a B-. C+ is just way too low for that. I don't think I snap pick this up like I do a Night Veil Predator. This is not an easy spell to cast. But the one big upside that Simic has is if you have an adapt creature down that you haven't adapted, you can leave your mana up, and you're not really giving away that you have a Frilled Mystic because you're just probably going to do your adapt that turn, right? And then if you don't have anything to counter, you just do your adapt that turn. So I've got Frilled Mystic at a B-. I don't think I grab it and jump into Simic, but the second I'm Simic, I certainly grab it. So B- for Frilled Mystic. Up next is Galloping Liz Raagh. Galloping Liz Raagh is 3 green blue for a creature frog lizard at uncommon. It's a 3/3 trample. When Galloping Liz Raagh enters the battlefield, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. If you do, put twice that many +1/+1 counters on Galloping Liz Raagh. This is great. I think it's great. It's a 3/3 for 5 trample, which is awful. You'd never play that, and if you don't have counters, you should never play that. But if you have one counter, this is a 5/5 trample for 5. It's great. That's not a hard ask with Adapt and Riot, and also some of the spells going around that put counters on. So I think you always play this. I think it's a relatively high-ish pick. I think there may occasionally be a deck where you have like 2 adapt creatures and you probably just shouldn't play this. But as long as you pick this up early and as long as you've picked up adapt and riot stuff, this is going to be solid. I think this is like a straight up, I think B-. I'm not going to go any higher because if you don't have counters, it's dead. I mean, it's not dead, but it's trash. But as long as you have that one counter, it's a B- at least. So B- for Galloping Liz Raagh. Up next is Growth Spiral with gorgeous Seb McKinnon art. Green blue for an instant at common. Draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is instant speed, which means you can play the land at instant speed. I still don't know if it's good. I still don't actually know if this is any good. Think back to Llanowar Scout. That lets you put lands onto the battlefield at instant speed repeatedly for free. You just tap the creature. And think about how often you saw that played, or you played that and you were like, yeah, play a land, pass the turn, tap it, put a land down, play a land. Oh, I'm out of lands. And it just never, ever, ever was relevant ever again. You really, 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 really rapidly run out of lands to play when you're playing 2 lands a turn. So I don't know if I'm sold on Growth Spiral. There are going to be games where this is an amazing turn 2 play because you have the lands that you need and you're going to get out a 4-drop early. But I don't know how many more games there's going to be where this just not that good. So I'm not sold on Growth Spiral. I'm not sold on it. I'm going to have to play it. I'm going to have to see how it's played. But my instinct is this is actually like a C-. I actually don't think you want to play this card, but I'm going to keep my eye on it. I think people are going to go way too overboard on rating this, so I'm gonna go the other way a little bit and go with a C- on Growth Spiral. Up next is Gyre Engineer. Gyre Engineer is 1 green blue for a creature Vidalcan Wizard at uncommon. It's a 1/1 tap, add green blue. You get 2 mana out of this. This is amazing. This is super amazing. This is a snap first pick in a lot of packs. Unfortunately, it's really the only ramp we're getting. You know, we have the rare elf, which you're not going to see very often. We have Growth Spiral, which hopefully works as ramp, but maybe you just don't have the land that you need to ramp there. But yeah, this thing's insane. If you get this, then you can just go nutty with your deck. This feels like a cube pick. This will let you play your Craterhoof Boar Impersonator. This will let you adapt everything you ever want. This is going to be amazing. This is a snap first pick. I've got it at a solid B. It's obviously not a bomb or anything, but it is fantastic. B for Gaia Engineer. Up next is Hydroid Crisis. Hydroid Crisis is X green-blue for a creature Jellyfish Hydra Beast at Mythic. It's a 0/0. When you cast this spell, you gain half X life, then draw half X cards, round down each time. Flying, trample. Hydroid Crisis enters the battlefield with X, +1/+1 counters on it. This thing is really good. I've seen some huge hype for this card. I don't think I'm going to go as high as like an A+ or anything on this, but it is still super good and super efficient. At 3 mana, we have kind of a garbage card that I don't really want to play. We have a 1/1 Flying Trample. It doesn't even do anything because you round down. You should not cast this for that. At 2 mana, we've got a 2/2 flyer that gains life and draw a card. That's fine. I don't think it's first pickable, but it's fine. But of course, this is not just that, because you could cast this on 5 mana or 6 mana or etc., and it starts to get out of control. This is going to be an amazing top deck later in the game, and yeah, it's going to be really tough to deal with. It grows real fast with your mana, and the card draw in green is going to be amazing. The life is neither here nor there. Yeah, I think this is a very good card. You just have to make sure that you do get to a point in the game where it's relevant. Casting this for 0 is stupid, obviously. For 1 is probably just as stupid. And 2 is where I start to feel okay, but still not the best, because I know what this card could be. So I've got this at an A-. I think it's very good. I think it's a strong first pick. I would prefer to cast this with the most mana possible every game, and I know I'm not going to be allowed to do that. Sometimes I'm going to have to cast it as a 2/2 flyer. A- for Hydroid Crisis. Up next is Prime Speaker Vannevar. Prime Speaker Vannevar is 2 green-blue for a legendary creature Elf Ooze Wizard at Mythic. She's a 2/4 with tap, sacrifice another creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. This, of course, is Birthing Pod. Birthing Pod is not good in Limited. It's not good. Building the perfect CMC chain of creatures that are relevant and that you want to spend your time sacrificing them doesn't come together in Limited. It doesn't come together. And the fact that it's sorcery speed means that you can't even like protect your creatures from removal or anything. I actually really don't care for this card. I think everybody's going to take it way higher than me. I think people are going to first pick this a lot. And I think it's going to be very mediocre. I think it's a 2/4 for 4 that just doesn't do much. Just doesn't do much at all. So I've actually got her really low. I've got her at like a C-. I think I play her as a filler creature. If you can build the perfect stepladder deck, good on you. I don't think I'm going to try, though. C- for Prime Speaker Vannevar. Up next is Sharkdo Crab. Sharkdo Crab is 2 green-blue for a creature Fish Octopus Crab at uncommon. It's a 4/4. Pay 2 green-blue to adapt 1, make it a 5/5. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Sharkdo Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. I love this thing, and not just because it's a Shark Octopus Crab, but in addition to it being a Shark Octopus Crab, a 4/4 for 4 is already fine. Straight up C. It borders on C+, just because 4/4s for 4 often feel decent. Getting up to 5 when you have the chance is nice, and when you do, you get to freeze a creature. that could end games right there. That could bring games almost to an end. There's lots that you can do there. If you can get more counters on this, it's going to be super good tempo. My one concern is that Simic hasn't looked super tempo-y. Looks a little bit more dirtily. So, I mean, maybe the freezing a creature is a little bit more to continue living until your ultimate experiment happens. I think I'd prefer this in blue-white, and I might actually somewhat heavily splash this in blue-white just to get that further tempo that I want to get. Still, this is like a bare minimum C+, and I think it's actually just a hard B-. Bad packs, this could probably be your first pick, and I think you'd be happy. So I'm going to go with a B- on Sharkdo Crab. It looks pretty decent. Up next is Simic Ascendancy. Simic Ascendancy is green-blue for an enchantment at rare. Pay 1 green-blue, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Now look, I love alternate win conditions. Love them. But you're not pulling this one off. If you have put 20 +1/+1 counters on creatures and you haven't already won the game, I don't know what you're doing. So I'm just going to ignore everything on this card other than pay 1 green-blue, put a counter on a creature. That's a great ability. That ruins combat math. Combat is a nightmare with this thing on the board, and it's an amazing mana dump. It is still a do-nothing enchantment, though, so I'm going to need to see that this format is not overly aggressive. If this format's overly aggressive, you do not have time to play this card. If this format is slow, and I've seen a lot of people been saying it's slow, I don't entirely know where that's coming from. I think at the pre-release we saw that it could be horrifyingly slow and that it could be incredibly fast as well. So I don't know where it's going to fall yet. Obviously need a lot more experience here. So I'm going to keep this at a C for right now. If the format is very slow, this is probably going to bounce up to like a B-. It is still a do-nothing enchantment. It still doesn't establish the board, but that is still a decent card. And if this format is fast and you just have to respect Rakdos and whatnot, then this is probably more like a C- or even a D. So, I don't know. I don't know the grade for Simic Ascendancy. Our last true gold card for Simic is Agana, Utopian Speaker. Agana is 2 green-blue for a legendary creature merfolk wizard at rare. She's a 4/4. When Agana, Utopian Speaker, enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. Pay 4 green-blue, adapt 4. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. So if she draws a card, awesome. A 4/4 that draws a card for 4 is great. If she doesn't, she's still a 4/4 for 4, and that's still fine. I'm not even remotely sad at that. Then, a couple turns later, she's an 8/8 trample. Also, all my other creatures with counters have trample even before that. This isn't exactly bomby, but it is super solid. I'm getting flashbacks to Nessie and Asp with just how big she's going to get. So I've got her at a B+. I think she's fantastic. I think she's a snap first pick. I think she instantly pushes you into Simic. Very, 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 very good. B+ for Zanaga, Utopian Speaker. Our hybrid card for Simic is less good. It's Scuttle Gator. Scuttle Gator is 4 Simic, 4 green, 4 blue, or 4 blue-green. For a creature, crab, turtle, crocodile at common, it's a 6/6 defender. Pay 6 Simic, 6 green, 6 blue, 6 blue-green. Adapt 3, it becomes a 9/9. As long as Scuttle Gator has a +1/+1 counter on it, it can attack as though it didn't have defender. No. I'm not paying 6 mana for a creature that can't attack. That is bad news. Don't do that. Do not do that. Then I have to get to 8 mana. 8 mana is not an amount of mana that you get to in a limited game of Magic all that often. And I've had people question that. I've had people say, oh, I always get to 8 mana in my games of Magic. And here's some stats. Hard stats right here. In order to have a 53% chance, just over a coin flip chance, of drawing 8 lands in a game of Magic, you need to draw 18 cards. That is turn 11. 11 draws plus 7 cards at the start. On the draw, if you're on the play, you have to go to turn 12. It changes set to set, but the usual ending turn of a set is between turn 6 and turn 9. 8 mana is just not even slightly remotely a guarantee. And for putting all of that mana in, for investing 14 mana into this creature, I get a 9/9 vanilla. No, I would never play a 9/9 for 9 vanilla, let alone a 14 mana 9/9 vanilla creature. I don't like Scuttle Gator. I think Scuttle Gator's bad. I've got this at like a D-. I never, ever want to play it. On to the split cards. Up first, we have Incubation and Incongruity. Incubation is a single Simic mana, green or blue, for a sorcery at uncommon. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Incongruity is 1 green blue for an instant. Exile target creature. That creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token. So Incubation, not a huge fan. 1 mana to find a creature. Hopefully, you could, of course, whiff on this. Is not something I'm hugely a fan of. Adventurous Impulse was okay, but hugely overplayed. And hitting a land was very solid with Adventurous Impulse. It made that card a lot better, I think. This will probably be in a similar place in my drafting as Adventurous Impulse, which is to say I will basically never play this half of the card. So like C-, I think actually D+ for Incubation. Incongruity is a whole heck of a lot better. Incongruity is removal. It's Beast Within, except instead of 2 and a green, it costs 1 green blue. That is actually really solid removal. They do get a 3/3. That does suck. But if it was a 4/4 flyer, or like some sort of 7/7 trample they had, I'll give them a 3/3 in exchange for it any day of the week. And while it's not an ideal use, you could also upgrade a smaller creature of yours. You do want to use this as removal, though. Totally solid. I'd happily take this and look to splash or be Simic with this card. So I really like Incongruity. I don't care for Incubation. So this card's a B if you're playing Incongruity. If you are not Simic and not splashing, you don't play Incubation. Our rare is Repudiate and Replicate. Repudiate is Simic, green, blue, or green, blue for an instant. Counter target activated or triggered ability. So let's just take a quick aside there. Activated abilities are any ability that have a cost. Could be mana, could be tapping, could be sacrifice, but they have a cost, and then a colon, and then something. That's an activated ability. Triggered abilities are anything that use the words when, whenever, and if. If those words aren't there, it's not a triggered ability. And this card counters them. And that's not very good. There's just nothing that I would want to include an entire card in my deck to be able to counter a triggered or activated ability. I don't care. But boy, is it going to feel bad when some big stompy green deck counters some important triggered ability of mine or something. But no, this card's awful. It's like a D-. I'd even go as far as to say it's an F for Repudiate. Replicate, on the other hand, it's Clone. That's really good. That's really, really, really good. But the trick, of course, with clones is that it's only as good as your deck is. If you top out with like a 3/3 flyer as your scariest threat, Repudiate or Replicate's not that amazing. Sure, a second 3/3 flyer would probably really help you out, and you'll still play this card, but it makes this card like a C+. But if you have bomb after bomb after bomb, well, here's a 4th copy of a bomb. So this will really vary between if it's like a C+ or if it's like an A. And that's not the kind of card I'm super happy playing. But if I was Simic and if I did have those like real threats, you better bet I'm going to jam this in and just see what happens with it. So hard to give a grade to this card. Let's split the difference and say it's a B for Replicate, but don't really even think about Repudiate. It's not a great half of the card. All right, long video today. We still have a whole guild to go here. We've got Orzhov to talk about. Up first in Orzhov is Basilica Bellhaunt. Basilica Bellhaunt is white, black for a creature's spirit at uncommon. It's a 3/4. When Basilica Bellhaunt enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and you gain 3 life. It's Siege Rhino. It's really not. Why are people saying that? This is nowhere near as good as Siege Rhino. It's not a 4/5. It doesn't have trample. It doesn't deal damage to your opponent. This is not Siege Rhino. I actually don't even super care for this card. This is not pulling me into Orzhov at all. This is not Night Veil Predator. This is not even Golgari Findbroker. This is fine. And if I'm in Orzhov, I'll pick it up and it'll feel okay. A 3/4 for 4 is okay, I guess. That's not even vanilla test passing. It doesn't have flying or any sort of ability. My opponent discards a card. That's cool. Turn 4 is often kind of the turn where you kind of have a chance of getting something. You're going to get maybe their 5-drop or 6-drop. They may not be happy about discarding a land if it's their last land and they desperately need it. And gaining 3 life is, I guess, cool, but that's not something I ever want to pay mana for. So I don't get the hype for Basilica Bellhaunt. I actually don't think it's that good. I've got it at like a C. It might even be a C. I'm not going to give a C plus to a 3/4 for 4. No, this is a C. This is a C. This is nowhere near Siege Rhino. This is not amazing. If you're in Orzhov, sure, play it, but this is not Siege Rhino. C for Basilica Bellhaunt. Next up is Ethereal Absolution. Ethereal Absolution is 4 white-black for an enchantment at rare. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1. Pay 2 white-black. Exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. If it was a creature card, you create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. This card is nutty. The only thing slightly holding it back is that it costs 6 mana, but it's still incredible. And Anthem is great. It's kind of a +2/+2 Anthem because your opponent's getting -1/-1 to everything. Your -1/-1 to everything kills some amount of your opponent's creature. It shuts off their afterlife. It in fact kills some number of their afterlife creatures and then immediately kills the spirits that come out. And then you get to make 2/2 flyers for 4 mana by exiling any creature card from your opponent's graveyard. This thing's nutty. It should be a snap first pick. You should jam it into your deck. Make sure that you're not a super aggressive Orzhov deck. People have been telling me that deck doesn't exist. I think it does. It might not be as good as the grindier version, but I think it exists. And yeah, this card's going to be insane. I almost maybe wish it was a mythic, but hopefully it doesn't appear too often. Solid B+ for Ethereal Absolution. Not quite going to go into the A range because you still need some creatures to make this be good. This will not necessarily get you back if you're really behind in board state, but it has a chance. It has a chance. So B+ for Ethereal Absolution. Up next is Final Payment. Final Payment is white-black for an instant at common. As an additional cost to cast this spell, pay 5 life or sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Destroy target creature. 2 mana, instant kill a creature is great. It is not an early game kill spell because you don't want to be paying 5 life or sack a creature to kill a 2/2 or a 1/1. You need to be killing very real threats with this card to pay the cost that this is asking. Sacking a creature that's not afterlifey or doesn't give you some sort of value by dying will probably feel bad, and 5 is a serious bit of damage. Still, I want one of these in every black-white deck I play. I will pay 5 life to kill the scariest thing in my opponent's deck. 100%. At instant speed at that. But I don't know if I ever really want the second one. If I have a ton of afterlife, sure. So yeah, I think this is a solid B for the first one. The second one drops like a rock unless you have a whole bunch of afterlife or some sort of things like that. So B for the first Final Payment. Up next is Grasping Thrall. Grasping Thrall is gorgeous. Surprise, Seb McGinnon art. 3 white-black for a creature Thrall at common. It's a 3/3 flyer. When Grasping Thrall enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. This card's amazing. This card is absolutely amazing. 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer. Well, that's 1 mana more than I like to pay for my 3/3 flyers, but it's not at all asking too much of me. And a 2 life drain, a 4 life swing is super solid. This card just seems very, very, very good in the Orzhov deck. I think it's an easy. I was going to say C+. It feels almost like a B-. I'm not sure if you play 2 of them. Actually, you probably just play 2 of them every single time. So yeah, you know what? B- for Grasping Thrall. This card is great. Up next is Imperious Oligarch. Imperious Oligarch is white-black for a creature human cleric at common. She's a 2/1 with Vigilance and Afterlife 1. She's good. She's really, really good. A 2/1 for 2 with Vigilance, which, big whoop, this is not a card that needs Vigilance. She's only blocking one time, and that's it. That's the end of her. But even barring that, she's still really, really good. And even if she comes down late in the game, she's a jump blocker that makes you a relevant creature. She seems really good. C+, I think I'd play every copy of her. I'm not going to go crazy picking her up really early or anything, but super solid C+ for Imperious Oligarch. Up next is Kaya, Orzhov Usurper. Kaya is a 1 white-black legendary planeswalker Kaya at Mythic for, again, 3 loyalty for 3 mana. +1, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life if at least 1 creature card was exiled this way. -1, exile target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. -5, Kaya, Orzhov Usurper deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. She's not good in limited. Her +1 is pointless. You maybe gain 2 life, and you get to exile cards from the graveyard in a set that doesn't actually have much graveyard stuff going on. No real interest. Her -1 is removal for tokens, I guess, or like 1/1s. Don't care. And her ultimate, I guess you're building up a sort of big fireball here if you do exile the cards with her +1, but I'd probably rather play cards that don't require things to go perfectly for several turns in order to pull it off. I'll probably try her out at some point in an arena draft that doesn't really matter, just to see if I can, like, grind out exile cards and build up to that fireball. It does only take 3 turns for her to deal 6 damage, assuming your opponent had 6 cards to choose from in their graveyard. But that's still way too long. I've got her at a D-. I'm not quite going to put her in an F because people will still freak out and throw way too much attackers at her to try to keep her off of her ultimate, and that's not going to be usually correct. You should still probably just go to the face. So not an F, but a D- for Kaya. Up next is Kaya's Wrath, which is a Wrath. Kaya's Wrath is white, black for a sorcery at rare. Destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. I've said this before. I'm not a huge fan of Wraths in Limited. I do talk about this a lot, but it requires you to sandbag creatures in the hope that it's going to work out for you. You know, you don't play your 2-drop, you don't play your 3-drop, you don't play your 4-drop. You try to get your opponent to overextend. Your opponent just keeps punching you in the face, and then you cast this, and you hope it worked. You hope that your opponent doesn't just have more gas, and you then finally start building your board. Kaya's Wrath helps alleviate that a little bit because you can play a couple of more creatures because you're going to gain some life off of them from them dying. But I'm still not a huge fan of Wraths in Limited. And boy, Wraths in Limited really lose their effectiveness after game 1. Once your opponent knows you have this card, they're not going to overcommit to the board. They're going to play exactly what they need to do to hold on and hopefully try to win a little bit, but they're going to keep stuff back until they see this card get played. So I'm at a C+ on Kaya's Wrath. It's just not what I really like in Limited. People love Wraths way more than I do, so I'm just never going to get to play this card. C+ for Kaya's Wrath. Up next is Knight of the Last Breath. Knight of the Last Breath is 5 white-black for a creature Giant Knight at uncommon. It's a 4/4, pay 3, sacrifice another non-token creature. Create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. Afterlife 3. We did it. We finally found an Afterlife 3, and unfortunately, but fortunately, it's way too expensive. 7 mana is a bit of a pipe dream. Giving every other creature Afterlife 1 is cool, but only if you willingly sacrifice them and also pay 3 mana to do it, which is a lot for a sack outlet. But I guess if you cast this, you have mana to spare. Mana just coming out of somewhere. Ultimately, I feel like this is just way too expensive, and like I said, I'm glad, because Afterlife 3 would have ruined the format if this was any cheaper. So on the board, this is like a B+, but I'm just not sure how often I'm going to get this on the board. So I'm going to start this at like, I think a C-. I think you just have to cut this a lot. I don't really want to play this card. C-, thankfully, for Knight of the Last Breath. Up next is Mortify. Mortify is 1 white-black for an instant at uncommon. Destroy target creature or enchantment. I've heard people saying the removal's bad in this set, or the removal's worse than Ravnica, Guilds of Ravnica, and I don't agree. Because we have stuff like this. There's a lot of instant speed, unconditional, cheap mana cost removal. This is a snap first pick. It's premium instant speed removal. It even hits enchantments if you happen to need to, but you're generally going to hit creatures with this. This is just a straight A. This is first pickable in every single pack above everything except for the most game ending of bombs. Solid A for Mortify. Up next is Pitiless Pontiff. Pitiless Pontiff is white-black for a creature, vampire, cleric, and uncommon. It's a 2/2. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Pitiless Pontiff gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. If you're building something aristocraty, then here's your sack outlet. Here's one of your best sack outlets. It still costs mana, which is pretty lame, but at least it's only 1. Still, this thing basically means your opponent's never attacking on the ground, because you have a Death Toucher to eat their creature and still live, which seems totally fine. I think I'd happily play this in every black-white deck as like a C+, and if you are doing any sack shenanigans, if you do have a bunch of Afterlife creatures, she jumps up to a B-. So C+, B- for Pitiless Pontiff. Up next is our other Orzhov mythic, Seraph of the Scales. Seraph of the Scales is 2 white-black for a creature, angel, ep mythic. She's a 4/3 flyer. Pay a white. Seraph of the Scales gains Vigilance until end of turn. Pay a black. Seraph of the Scales gains Death Touch until end of turn. Afterlife 2. This card's great. This card is super good. Stone Cold first pickable bomb. 4/3 flyer for 4. Already great. I pay that for 3/2 flyers. Vigilance if I want it for cheap. Awesome. Blocks with Death Touch for cheap. Awesome. Dies, creates a 2/1 flyers. Awesome, because boy is this gonna die. Easy, super solid A here. Don't ever pass it. A for Seraph of the Scales. She might even be an A+, but I feel like 5 power is usually the difference for me between an A+ and an A. But anyways, A for Seraph of the Scales. Up next is Syndicate Guildmage. Syndicate Guildmage is white-black for a creature, human, cleric, and uncommon. It's a 2/2. Pay 1 and a white, tap. Tap target creature with power 4 or greater. Pay 4 and a black, tap. Syndicate Guildmage deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. It's Boros Guildmage. Not Boros Guildmage. Legion Guildmage, but reanimated, I guess. Yeah, 2 mana, tap a threat is great. Sure, you can't tap a smaller thing, but usually you're wanting to tap a big thing anyways. 5 mana to deal 2 is okay. It's not quite as game ending as 3 was with Boros, but it's cheaper. All in all, this is a totally fine Guildmage. Probably first pickable, all around solid. I'd be happy if every Orzhov deck had one. B- for Syndicate Guildmage. Our last gold Orzhov card is Teysa Karlov. Teysa Karlov is 2 white-black for legendary creature, human advisor. Our other advisor for the mill guys. At rare, she's a 2/4. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink. Now, of course, the main thing that she'll do in this set is make double your Afterlife spirits. She will also double trigger things like Vindictive Vampire or whatever else there was. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to actually build that Aristocrats deck. I want it to happen, but I don't think we've ever really had an Aristocrats deck in limited work. We've certainly had red-black sacrifice, but that's usually much more of an aggro deck, and a lot of the sacrificing is your opponent's creatures. You steal them and sack them. Just sacking stuff for value, it's never super come together, but Teysa will be an all-star in it if that works. There are sack outlets, there are payoffs, and of course we have Afterlife. So I think if you can properly build around her, she's going to be very solid as like a B-, but I think it might possibly be too much work. I'm going to start optimistically and hope you can do it and keep her at a B- for Teysa Karlov. If you can't get enough stuff though, she drops real hard. She just becomes kind of a vanilla 2/4, which is like a C-. Our split card, our hybrid card for Orzhov is Vizkopa Vampire. Vizkopa Vampire is 2 and an Orzhov, so 2 white or 2 black, for a creature vampire at common. It's a 3/1 lifelinker. It's a Child of Night for 1 more mana and 1 more damage. That's fine. That's fine. It's not exciting. People are very much telling me that Orzhov is not an aggro deck. I don't fully believe them because we have cards like this. We have a number of cards like this. And so I think you can do an aggro Orzhov deck. I think it basically looks like Vizkopa Vampires and the 3/1 Cat, but more specifically, things like the 2/1 Afterlife. Getting in with them for as much damage as they can until they die, popping them into spirits and getting through with the spirits until your opponent is dead. So if you are in that deck, I think this is like a C+. And if you are definitely the grindy Orzhov deck, then this certainly does drop down. Rakdos, of course, will be a fan of this card. Azorius, probably not quite as much. Basically, this floats around between being a C- and a C+, and it's going to kind of be up to you to decide on that for Vizkopa Vampire. Our second last card for the day, the uncommon split card for Orzhov, is Consecrate and Consume. Consecrate is 1 and an Orzhov, so 1 white or 1 black for an instant. Exile target card from a graveyard. Draw a card. Consume is 2 white black for a sorcery. Target player sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to its power. Consecrate is garbage. I don't care that card exists. What am I stopping? Jumpstart, Undergrowth, all those mechanics that are not in this set. I get to draw a card, whatever. It's worthless. You're never playing Consecrate because you want to play Consecrate. You're playing this card because Consume is fantastic. An edict effect that doesn't give your opponent a choice. They have to sack what is generally going to be the scariest thing on their board, the thing that you want to have die. Now, of course, there are going to be situations where they have a 6/6 defender that's never going to attack, and what you need dead is their 3/3 flyer, and this doesn't work. But in the vast majority of cases, this is going to kill the thing that you want to be dead, which is fantastic. I love Consume. I think it's really good. I think it's a very high pick. I've got it at like a B+. Play Consume. Don't cast Consecrate. Ever. B+ for Consume. And our final card for today as we reach the 1 hour mark is Revival and Revenge. Revival is Orzhov, white, black, or white, black. For a sorcery, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Revenge is 4 white, black for a sorcery. Double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life, rounded up. So Revival isn't the worst thing in the world. Getting a creature back to the battlefield is something I often enjoy, and it only costs 2 mana, but you're only getting a 3 CMC creature back. That's not probably going to be that impactful. It'll be impactful on turn 3 or 4, maybe 5, and then it's going to get way less impactful than you really want it to be. And Revenge, boy, are people pie in the sky over this. People are thinking about like a 40-point life swing. That's not going to happen. It's a 6-drop. A 6-drop comes down generally, I would say, past the midpoint of a game, if not towards the end of the game, and your opponent's life total ideally is going to be relatively low, meaning that this does like 5 damage, 6 damage, even worse, it does like 3 damage, 2 damage. Like if I'm casting this and my opponent's below 10 life, it feels really bad. And doubling your life total, well, you have to respect your opponent. They are hoping to have been hitting you too, which means you're going to gain some amount of life. But this is one of the hypothetical cards where we get to say, how much mana would you pay for a card that just gains you a bunch of life? And the answer to me is usually I would pay 1 mana if it gained me like, I don't know, 50 life. Then I might be okay. So I'm super out on Revenge. I don't think it's any good. I think it's like a D. D-. It might even just be an F. I'm not sold on this card. I don't really care for either halves. I don't want to be casting Revenge, which of course is not fair to say. I super want to be casting this. I want to be casting this when I am at 20 and my opponent is at 20, and I go to 40 and they go to 10. That will feel, again, not even terribly worth 6 mana, but sure, that's fine. But I don't want to have this card in my deck and hope that situation comes up. And Revival's just not doing enough for me either. So I'm out on this card. I'm at a D- on Revival and Revenge. So that's going to wrap it up for the first Guilds set review. Tomorrow we will cover Rakdos and Gruul, the aggro ones, plus the artifacts. There's not that many and they go really quick, and the lands, there's not that many and they go even quicker. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be the final day. We are 2 days out from pre-release now. Remember, if you're watching this right now on Wednesday, January 16th, then you should go on over to twitch.tv/ShamanLeek and check me out playing Sealed Ravnica Allegiance. If you are watching this on the 16th or the 17th, go on over to twitch.tv/ShamanLeek and check me out on the 17th playing Ravnica Allegiance Draft and doing a giveaway with Inked Gaming to get yourself a free playmat. As always, I want to hear what you think about all of these cards in the comments down below, what you agree with, disagree with, excited about, etc. If you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at The Mana Leek. That's Leek, like the vegetable, not the card. Facebook.com/The Mana Leek, Twitch.tv/The Mana Leek, and Patreon.com/The Mana Leek. If you like the content, click that thumbs up button, click subscribe if you want to see more. And if you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time.